Welcome to Discograffiti's 2025 Patreon Membership Super Drive. Now more than ever with our Beach Boys series underway, much of which will be living exclusively on our Patreon platform, this is the time to join, and I'm going to make it super easy for you. At the lieutenant or major tier, in addition to 3 or 4 shows a week, access to the gigantic archive of Patreon back episodes, and your backstage pass, through the month of December only, you'll also get the following. An onboarding call with me during which you'll tell me all your ideas on how to make the podcast you'd like to hear. And whether I use all, some, or none of your ideas, I'll have listened closely and most importantly gotten to know you. Plus, 3 months into your membership, you'll be eligible to appear on the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's right, an entire episode all about you, your band, your band's album, your band's tour, or whatever other cool stuff you might be up to. And not only do we make the episode, we promote it for you too. Last but not least, you'll receive a completely free digital copy of Metal Machine Muzak, which otherwise costs $11. Metal Machine Muzak is Discograffiti's double album Lou Reed tribute featuring 16-minute pieces by Lou Barlow from Sebadoh and Dino Jr., Corey Hansen from Wand, Mark Robinson from Unrest, and W. Cullen Hart from Olivia Tremor Control. Please tell all your music-obsessive friends. In fact, if your friends do sign up, be sure to email me at info@discograffiti.com and let me know who they are, because I'll be sending you an additional surprise gift on top of everything else as a token of my gratitude. And now, without further ado, the greatest music commentary podcast in all the land, I bring you Discograffiti.
I was in the back seat, and Murray got in, sitting shotgun, and I put my ass up to his face and farted. And everybody laughed. Murray goes, "That's okay, Dave. Just don't be disrespectful." How much more disrespectful can you fucking get?
Welcome to Discograffiti's wildly in-depth Beach Boys series and Your Dreams Come True, where Brian Wilson freaks like you and me get our chance to delve deep into the barely believable history and prodigious discography of my favorite band of all time, and also coincidentally the best, along with a slew of top-shelf guests ranging from musicians inspired by their work, family members, documentary directors, songwriting collaborators, Beach Boys authors, producers, touring band members, and for good measure, some of the Beach Boys themselves. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and special thanks goes out to Jeff McAvoy and especially co-producer Dennis Dykin, without whom this series would not have happened. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on David Marks. This is part 2 of my no-holds-barred conversation with the Beach Boy legend. Keep in mind, more than 50% of Discograffiti's Beach Boys series will be available exclusively on our Patreon platform, as I support a wife and a 6-year-old son with Discograffiti as my sole source of income. So if you're not a subscriber on the lieutenant or major tier, you'll only be getting a fraction of the story. To subscribe, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti. Before we start, just a quick word about this episode. The conversation you're about to hear began with an innocent phone call placed to Beach Boy David Marks this past summer, asking if it was possible to do an interview sometime soon. Then came a volley of thwarted attempts, which consisted of him calling me a loser, telling me to go fuck myself, and hanging up on me multiple times. It soon became abundantly clear that I'd passed some sort of really messed up persistence test, and that this was, in fact, the interview. This wasn't even conducted on Zoom. This recording was captured on the fly with just a microphone held up to the speaker on my smartphone that friend of the pod, Joe Kennedy, later enhanced for me. I had no outline or game plan, 0 research completed, and absolutely no notes whatsoever. Honestly, through this entire thing, I was just holding on for dear life. What followed, in my opinion, is the most honest interview in Discograffiti history. There was no other way to begin this season, which I'm calling Catch a Wave, spanning 1961 to the fall of 1964, not to mention the series as a whole. Here's just a few of the many things David and I discuss in this podcast. The Beach Boys songs on which David feels he's getting screwed out of royalties, the real truth behind his ousting from the band as David sees it, his wildly honest assessment of the Beach Boys albums that came after Pet Sounds, and in a director's cut exclusive, the incredible story of how his 2 blank check budget LPs with the Moon came together. If you're a Beach Boys superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the director's cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features 11 additional minutes of essential material. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Or better yet, just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. I recommend the Lieutenant tier at the very least, so you can access those director's cuts, but the major tier is what you want if you want it all. And I'm covering a bunch of these Beach Boys records on the major tier. Even if you're on the fence, just head over there because it's finally free to become a basic member. Coming up, we've got Al Jardine, Marilyn Wilson, Carney Wilson, Don Was, Ginger Blake, Pete Buck, Scott McGahee, Ira Kaplan from Yo La Tengo, The Cars' Elliot Easton, Sonic Boom, Don Fleming, Marshall Crenshaw, Lenny Kaye, The Righteous Brothers Bill Medley, Russ Titleman, Jerry Schilling, Greg Jacobson, Christian Love, Gary Griffin, David Beard, Probin Gregory, John Cowsill, David Leaf, Don Randy, John Stebbins, Rob Bonfilio, Wyatt Funderburk, Stephen Kalinich, Matt Jardine, Fred Vale, Sam Parker, Brent Wilson, Mark Lynette, Alan Boyd, Carly Minoz, and many more. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then.
I don't know why, but the money part of it has all seemed to elude me. I don't know. Mike gets a little defensive when I compare him to his Uncle Murray, but I think he's right in there with the how to steal money from children.
So
I love the guy, but hey.
Is he withholding money from you?
No, he's been stealing it all along from 1970. I signed a contract when I was, 14 or 15. My parents were there, and Dennis Carl and Brian's parents were there, Murray and Audrey. And Mike was already 21, so we signed a contract with Capitol Records, which is now a subsidiary of Universal, I think. Yeah. And I was supposed to get royalties for everything they played on for my whole life. But I'm not. I'm just getting royalties on a couple of things that I played on.
What are the things you are successfully getting royalties for?
Most of the first 4 albums, but then I did some stuff like Little Saint Nick and Don't Worry Baby, which if I could get royalties off of those, I wouldn't need the other ones.
Yeah.
A few other things. I had already quit the band, and the Beach Boys were on the road, and I didn't know it. I couldn't quit the band. I had 5% or 20% or whatever it was, the whole thing. And Brian would use me after school. I'd come over to Val's, and Brian would take me to Gold Star and say, play the chink chink on Don't Worry Baby, and like the intro and one of those things. And so I don't get royalties for that stuff. But I think it did come out on Capitol, right?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, and like shit, like what do you call it? Fun.
Oh, you're not getting royalties for that?
I'm not getting that. I'm not getting royalties for Little Saint Nick. I'm getting no royalties from Don't Worry Baby. And there's a couple of others, too, that are really big that I played on. And I don't know how I get aced out of getting royalties on that stuff. It's so fucked up,
What about Be True to Your School, Little Deuce Coupe? You get royalties for that?
Not on the school, but I do get royalties, I think, for Little Deuce Coupe. I get royalties on that, and 409 and Shutdown, and Surfing Safari, Surfing USA. Little Surfer Girl. What's the other? In My Room. I get royalties for that stuff that are on. They appear on like the first 4 albums, I think.
What's the best song from that entire time that you were there? What's the song you're proudest of on those records?
I guess Surfing Safari, maybe.
Oh, okay. So you're more partial to the up-tempo, the ones that Mike Love really appreciates, not the wrist-slitting depression classics?
Well, that was our first one.
Yeah.
Our first hit, and it was really rock and roll. It was really rock and roll. And it had Brian's extra chord in there, and it just was so cool. I don't know what it made in the charts, maybe number 2 or 3, or maybe not even, but it was like our first record, and it was like, well, I know Surfing might have been called our first record, but it was a piece of shit, and it didn't make it out of L.A. downtown. But Surfing Safari made a national hit.
So just the excitement of that, or the quality of the song itself?
The quality of the sound, when you hear Dennis's hit on the snare, boom, let's go surfing now. It was just kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then it got us it sent us on our first tour across America. And that was like really exciting for us. We got to trash motels and fuck groupies and drink whiskey.
Tell me how fucking crazy it got. I mean, tell me how depraved it actually got.
We used to go to horror houses and drink a lot. And then, Murray got word that John Hamilton, our road manager, was buying us horrors and shit. So he flew out to Chicago and fired John Hamilton, who was previously the Ventures road manager. And that's when I quit the band, when we picked Murray up at the Chicago airport. I was in the back seat, and Murray got in, sitting shotgun, and I put my ass up to his face and farted. And everybody laughed. And Murray, this is ironic. Murray goes, "That's okay, Dave. Just don't be disrespectful." How much more disrespectful can you fucking get? And, on the way to the airport, Brian goes, "Let's all get pipes. And when Dad gets in the car, we'll just light up all our pipes and roll the windows up," which we did, of course.
Wasn't he also castigating you about getting out of line? And did somebody get an STD or something like that?
No. He wanted me out because he wanted Mike out. He wanted both of us out. He wanted his family to be the corporation.
Right.
He didn't want me to be part of it, and he didn't even want his own flesh and blood, Mike Love, to be part of it. He was scheming and scamming. Murray Wilson was pressuring me to quit. When I said, "I quit," Murray goes, "You hear that, everybody? You got it. You quit." It was because he pressured me. He had all these little fucking psychological bullshit things like carrying my amp, and talking to girls after the show, smiling on stage, not too much treble on my guitar. And it was bullshit. He wanted me to quit.
Yeah.
So he could have my money.
Do you remember the day that happened?
Well, Ron Swallow said he was there.
It was August 30th, 1963.
I don't remember the day. Do you know Ron Swallow?
I don't. Who is that?
He was Carl's companion for life. Not that they were gay, but they were just buddies from high school. And Ron was there the day that my mom pulled me out of the band. And he would be more apt to describe that than me. He says my face went white and said, "What just happened?" But I stayed for another year because of all the contracts.
But leading up to that, were you trying to get kicked out of the band? Because all that stuff we were talking about earlier, the Little Douche Kit, and She's Real Fine, my 69, all that stuff, it seemed like the actions of somebody who no longer gives a shit about being in that group.
Yeah, Carl's the one who gave me the idea to say that. He didn't think I would actually do it. And no, I wasn't trying to intentionally be kicked out. It was like we were just being ourselves. Dennis, he was more of an asshole than I was doing that kind of shit. And he wasn't trying to get kicked out. We were just assholes. We were just little kids having a party.
Yeah.
We didn't know what the hell was going on. And I don't know. I don't want to be a Beach Boy anymore. That's bullshit. Who wouldn't want to be a Beach Boy anymore? But then my little ego and my mom got in the way, and it was like, oh yeah, I could do it. My mom says, oh, he'll start his own band, which wasn't too bad in the beginning. I was the first band assigned to A&M Records, other than the Tijuana Brass. And then we had a couple of bombs on that label, and then we got signed to Warner Brothers had a couple more bombs, but we got a lot of fun out of it. We toured California twice, and we found out that we were bombing because Murray Wilson was calling all the radio stations, telling them never to play my record because they wouldn't get Brian's new record.
Yeah, that's terrible, man. And
this jockey, the road shut down, and the scoop.
Roger Kristen?
Roger was the one who told me that.
Yeah, I had known about that. So to hear you be so level-headed in your, in your retrospective opinion of him is, doubly amazing knowing that, because, not only did he, fuck you financially, but he made sure that you didn't have a future in the business.
Murray was in like a feud with his son. He was jealous of his son, so they were in competition. So Murray heard me across the street practicing with my band, The Marksmen, because it was loud. Everybody in the neighborhood were there. And a big crowd in the street. We're playing, surf songs and shit. And Murray says, I wrote a couple songs, and we could get together and you get your songs and I'll produce you. And I said, Murray, you're the reason I quit the fucking Beach Boys, so, fuck you. And so he got those Sun Rays. They were like me and Carl's friends. They were a blues band, and Murray recruited them and turned them into the Sun Rays, and had a local hit, an LA hit with it. I live for the sun. Yeah. My song, I hate the fucking sun. Anyways.
You had said that you wanted to be in control, that you wanted to write your own songs and to emulate Brian. So I've always been curious, having read that quote, if you had actually taken any steps to do that previous to leaving the Beach Boys, if you had actually learned any tricks, picked up any techniques from Brian, and felt empowered by what you were creating.
Yeah.
No?
I'm pretending. Brian taught me shit, and I was just I was pretending to be Brian. I didn't really take myself seriously. Although I did kind of like a couple of those things, like Denny Murray sounded like Elvis. Stuff like Traveling, that was kind of clever. There were a couple of cool things about the Marksmen.
So you leave the group, and you have $22,000 in a trust fund that your folks had set up for you. And then during the 60s, you would get $7,000 to $8,000 every 6 months. And that's kind of the setup for David Marks and the Marksmen. But then after the group folded, here's where I'm really curious how you get from the Marksmen to finding yourself taking a lot of LSD and lying on your back in Venice, California to get to the moon.
I don't know. I think the Venice LSD period might have been pretty close with the moon recordings, because I remember me and Matt were taking lots of acid and smoking lots of weed. So it might have been around the same time. Or maybe the Venice might have been maybe just a little bit before. Yeah, it was actually. I was still living in the house in Inglewood when I was hanging out with these guys. And it was shortly, maybe a year or two after that, is when I moved to Hollywood and started recording with Matt. Yeah, that's the chronology, yeah. It almost reminds me of the Marksmen a little bit. That stuff was just as stupid as some of the Beach Boys shit.
So the Beach Boys are fucking flailing around like crazy at this point, too. I mean, by the end of the 60s, they're in pretty dire straits. Looking back at the material now, I think it's brilliant, and a lot of other people do, too. But at the time, they couldn't get arrested. So were they reaching out to you to come back in the band at that point, or did that start happening later?
Mike kind of was. And I kind of refused, kept an arm's length away, and I actually believed that they were through. I didn't think anybody was going to be interested in them again, but then here comes Kokomo and all that bullshit.
Well, that's a lot later.
Most of that 70s shit is just like diarrhea. A lot of that shit is just poop. That 70s crap. Friends and all that shit.
You don't like Friends, really?
I don't like any of that. I never liked any of their music. I must admit, I do like a lot of the Pet Sounds album.
Yeah.
Touches me. And everything, it's fun to play Kokomo on a show, yeah, but it's poop. Yeah. And Beach Boy fans are idiots. Sorry, man.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I appreciate your honesty is refreshing. So you think everything after Pet Sounds is poop?
Yeah. Boring poop.
Oh, hi, I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 5-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate weekly podcast for music obsessives thrive. But weekly wasn't enough for me, so I bumped it up to 4 shows a week. Becoming a subscriber to Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to hundreds of exclusive episodes. As a 2-show per week private, you get the weekly show by and for our Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a 3-show-a-week lieutenant, you'll get early release, ad-free, extended director's cuts of the main show. They're the shows as they were intended to be heard. Plus, you'll gain access to half the Patreon archive and the upcoming Beach Boys Behind the Mirror companion episodes, which will feature dozens of special guests from within the Beach Boys camp talking about and rating their music. But as a 4-show-per-week major, you'll be drowning in a flood of must-hear binge listening, because I'll be bombarding you with episodes about super cool bands that are too subterranean for free Fridays. It's like going to music college, but with a tuition that makes all kinds of sense. Plus, our entire Patreon archive is yours. Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off show, Queasy Listening, and the Private Press with Paul Major. And all that for the price of only a cup of coffee a week. Times are tough, you say? Fret not, because there's a $1 tier. Or you could just join as a basic member and buy episodes piecemeal from our Patreon shop. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Check out patreon.com/discograffiti to find the tier that's right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti.
Okay, I like Surf's Up. That's pretty cool.
Well, that was 1967, basically. Were you buying the records, or were they sending them to you?
It just seems like it's far-reaching for those guys. After Brian Bell, it seems like there's a couple of cool things, but for the most part, it just seems desperate. You know, Ricky and Blondie. It's all like just like desperate poop.
During that time, were they reaching out to you, and was Mike begging you to come back in the group?
Pretty much. He had a promotion scheme going on. It was like the early 70s, though, and through maybe half the way through the 70s. It was like I'd sit in maybe a couple of times with his band, but I just wasn't interested. It was like so stupid. I mean, I was making more money as a session guy at that time.
So you're working with some big people, Leon Russell, right? Delaney Bramlett, James Booker. Was Jim Keltner your gateway into that?
Well, Danny Moore pretty much was working with Keltner, and Keltner did get me into the Delaney and Bonnie band. But Danny Moore, he got me playing with James Booker and a lot of cool. He was a big-time producer. When the Christy Minstrels broke up, they all wanted to do a solo album, and Danny hired me to play on every one of them. Yeah, there were some guys from New Orleans that Danny hired me to play with. Actually, Danny's the one who got me hooked up with Keltner. And Keltner, he hooked me up with the Delaney and Bonnie band and actually got me into playing with Dr. John. Yeah, Keltner and me were cool buddies. He got me on the bus on the Joe Cocker tour, Dogs and Englishmen. You know,
No
Danny
shit.
was on, but I wasn't on the tour except for traveling. I was on the bus, but I didn't play in the band.
Did you meet
I
Leon?
just sat in the back of the bus and got drunk with Keltner.
So did you meet Leon and get to play with Leon as a result of that tour?
Well, yeah, after that, one of my friends, Buzz Clifford, moved to Tulsa, and he was hanging out with Leon, who had bought a church in Tulsa, like made out of big rocks, and he turned it into a studio to hang out for musicians. So I'd hang out there and sit on the couch. And Leon had this 16-track recorder going on 24/7. He would record everything said and everything played. And he just wanted me to tell him about Brian. And then we played in the studio with like one of Buzz's songs, Ain't That I Don't Love You, which Freddie King ended up recording. Yeah, I liked my time in Tulsa. Freddie King, got to go see him.
So Mike is trying to get you in the band. Does he ever relent and just let you go on your path? Because I know by the late 90s, you're back in the band for a few years, right?
Yeah, late 90s until 2000. This was when Mike was trying to get his license to use the Beach Boys name. And his plan was to get rid of Blues and Al. And Mike and Carl, they're going to get and then they're going to get me. So back then, it only took 3 to get the license. Now I think it's only 2. Of course, that's why I'm not there, or Al. And then Mike calls me and goes, all right, we'll give you this much. And I go, well, okay, that's good to start with. I didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden I knew that Matt and Al were mad at me. They thought I was in on the conspiracy. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was a pawn.
Did you and Al Jardine never get along?
We always got along.
You did?
Yeah.
It seems like there's an issue that hung over you guys.
He does some stupid shit, and so do I, but we've always been friends, and we love each other.
Okay. So you're in the band for a few years in the late 90s, and it does not go well?
Well, it was just that Al felt tricked because, he didn't know there was a conspiracy against him, and he thought I was in on it. But it didn't take long for us to iron it out. I told him that I was innocent, and he forgave me, It's like he understood that Mike was going behind his back with Carl. Boy, this is stuff that no one's ever heard before. You better be careful.
In what way?
I don't know. Get sued. Mike will sue us.
I don't think Mike enjoys suing people, does he?
Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm just kidding.
Are you born yesterday?
I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding.
The most litigious fucking asshole ever born.
So was that the wind-up to the pitch of That's Why God Made the Radio?
What?
I mean, the whole thing in the late 90s, because That's Why God Made the Radio is actually a really sophisticated and beautiful way for the band to go out. I know they're still going, and I know, I saw a version of the Beach Boys the other night, but, to me, that was the sunset on the Beach Boys.
Yeah, we're performing that on stage, and at one point, Mike comes over to me and whispers in my ear, and he says, I thought Marconi made the radio. And remember when we would do those things with Carl and Dennis, back them up on the screen, right?
Yeah.
Dennis would be singing, what was that song he did? Forever?
Forever, yeah.
Mike walk over to me and whisper in my ear and say, the fucking psychopath. And then Carl would be singing God Only Knows and would be back. Mike would walk over to me and whisper in my ear and he'd go, what a backstabber. But it was his sense of humor.
Yeah.
He loved those guys a lot. But that was just funny shit.
I feel like Mike has gotten an incredibly bad rap over the years. And it seems to me, from my vantage point, just where I am in my life, and the information I've taken in about him, that it's totally unjustified.
Well, you got to have a demon. You got to have somebody to hate. You love to hate him. Every band has one. Maybe not, but it's just that his sense of humor sometimes rubs people wrongly.
Yeah.
It was like when John Lennon said that he was more popular than Jesus.
Right,
He didn't mean it. It was like, that's just society. It was his comment on how fucked up society is. And Mike's sense of humor is sort of dark most of the time. I remember he sent me home off the road because I was drunk. And I called him up the next day and says, well, I'm calling to evaluate my position in the band. He goes, yeah, on your knees.
You're talking about That's Why God Made the Radio, that tour?
Yeah, it's like, he's great. Man, I love that guy. He's so funny.
Oh, by the way, on that tour, if I remember correctly, were you singing Get You Back?
I started off singing, I think, Surf and Safari, the first few gigs. And then they switched me over to Hawaii. And then Mike comes up to me and goes, Dave, can I have Hawaii back? And I says, I don't know, man. I'll let you know. So he comes up to me a couple nights later and goes, okay, this is a song I wanted Dennis to sing, and I think that you and Dennis have sort of a similar kind of a timbre in your voices, and so it's called To Get You Back. And so if I can have Hawaii back, I'll give you Get You Back. I said, okay. And then people started saying, what are you singing that song for? Well, because Mike said, and he did a better job on the record. One night I went to Mike and I says, that this is a song about date rape. And he jumped back, and then he changed the words. And I didn't sing it anymore after that. But he did change the words. It is. And Brian wrote a song about, like being a pedophile. Remember that song, Hey Little Tomboy?
Oh, yeah.
Bounce you up on my lap or whatever it was. Fucking assholes.
But you're playing guitar throughout the entire record, right?
Oh, yeah, I am. And they erased a lot of it, man. I did some crazy shit on there. I guess that's why they erased it, because it was too crazy, but yeah.
And it's amazing because you're the only one of the Beach Boys who plays an instrument on really their last record.
Pretty much, yeah.
Not pretty much. Al Jardine.
Well, what about Al? Al didn't play nothing, huh?
Al whistles on From There to Back Again. but you're the only one who plays an instrument. Everyone else just sings.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
But I did get to sing, too. I remember hearing myself, my voice, singing with Mike on that album, too. And a couple of tunes like the title tune. That's why God Made the Radio. I can hear myself singing with Mike.
Yeah, which is, I mean, what a great song. The record's not necessarily perfect, but it's...
And nobody actually knows who wrote that, do they? I know Brian didn't have that. They might have put his name on it, but I know he didn't write any of that.
I could tell you what names are on there, but that doesn't necessarily...
Jimmy somebody or something, and probably...
Joe Thomas.
I bet you that Joe Thomas probably wrote a bunch of it.
Yeah, Joe Thomas. It's a really elegant way to go out. The record's incredible.
I love that recording. When I first heard it, it did remind me of Brian, but the whole production came out really great, I think.
And not only that, not just that song, but really the whole record and the suite at the end, the 3-song suite, is really beautiful. It seems like it's trying to kind of tie a bow around the whole package and end the thing on a note of grace. And, you know, with Summer's Gone, unfortunately, John Bon Jovi has a writing credit on that. But, you know, as the last song, it's really beautiful. And so... how did that end, that experience? I mean, how did you then get booted off? Because to me, just conceptually, it doesn't make sense that you're not with them anymore. So I'm just wondering how the whole thing crumbled.
What pisses me off is that the guys in Brian's band were bitching about the auto-tune or whatever. And I said, you know, screw that. You can use special effects in Star Wars and in the movies. Why not on recordings? It's the technical age, you know. And if you hadn't used auto-tune on Brian and Mike's voices, you wouldn't have been able to release this recording at all.
Right.
And they did it, and Joe Thomas did a beautiful job. He was not trying to get away with shit, just trying to tune stuff up. And I loved it. I thought it was great. But I'm biased because he used my guitar and my voice more than I would have expected. But, you know, I thought it turned out really well. I think it was a masterpiece. I think that was the highlight of our career.
Do you really? You mean of your time with them or the entire career?
Well, nothing's been done since then. That was like a wonderful climax.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that was the end.
After that, Mike put the kibosh on that. We could have still been working to this day, actually. Capitol offered us a couple of more album deals, and Mike turned it all down because he's in control, and he was losing money on his touring revenue with him and Bruce because he had to pay for all those trucks and equipment and shit. So he just said, no, thanks. But we could have still been going to this day.
So how did it deteriorate?
Because Mike was losing money is how we were deteriorated.
If I'm just, you know, an objective overseer here, you know, with regard to him sticking with Bruce as opposed to you kind of seem to play this figure that has a glue that unifies, you know, a lot of the rift that occurs in the family because you play with Brian, you play with Mike, and you kind of shift easily. And I don't know how, because your way with words can be extremely excoriating, but you have that ability in you, obviously. So it seems crazy to me to let you go. And not only that, you're the only guy whose instrument they kept on. So
yeah, just wait till I try to sue them, then things will change.
Is that what you're planning on doing?
No, but I'm saying that I've been sort of a neutral pussy through all of this. I never stood up for my rights.
Why didn't they
wanted me to do?
Why didn't you sue them?
When Melinda and Jackie were playing me as a pawn, I just go along with it. So that's why what I get away with is possible, because I'm just a neutral kind of a passive wimp.
In all seriousness, then, do you take it out on guys like me that express interest?
No, I don't. I'm not taking anything out on you. I'm just expressing.
No. I mean, right now you're not. But at the head of this conversation, if I was a little douche, I would have crawled away. I mean, I wasn't expecting you to talk to me like that. But I can also understand it might not feel comfortable for you to act that way to Mike or to, you know, these guys that you grew up with. But, you know, it's sour grapes when there's people who really treasure what you've done.
You wouldn't believe it, but excuse me.
Are you taking a rip?
The way I've talked to Mike, you would never believe. I would never believe he would still talk to me after the things I've said to him. It's like nothing close to what I still do, because it's more personal and it goes back like brothers. And that's, I guess, the only person you could talk to like that would be a brother.
Right. And you know what? It's shooting yourself in the foot to get rid of people like that in your life, because those are the people who know you best. And without those kinds of people in your life, you're really fucked.
Pretty much, I guess. It's a double-edged sword, really. It's, in one way, it's gave me a life, and the other way, it's ruined my life. So
how so?
How so? What?
The thread that pulls all your adventures in music together over the last bunch of decades is not just you shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, you're a good player, and you have some kind of neutrality that allows you to, not just talk out of line, but to be the glue.
Never looked at it that way.
You're, I think, the only Beach Boy who kind of slides back and forth between the Mike and Brian camps.
Well, not so much Brian anymore, or Mike app for that matter. Maybe a little bit more with Al. We just did a gig together a couple weeks ago. It kind of confused me. A couple of weeks ago, Mike tried to get in touch with me, and then he never got back to me because I was offline or something. And then I called Timmy, and Timmy tried to get a hold of it, and I was like, it seems like he might be suffering from dementia. I already warned you about that before.
Yeah.
He gets into something and then forgets it.
Yeah.
Or repeats himself and then forgets it. It's like weird. I might be off base on that, but something to look out for him.
Is he the one you're closest to at this point in the group?
Maybe before, but probably Al closer nowadays.
When you look back at it all, I mean, do you look back at all those guys with love, or is there just too much fucking bullshit in the water?
Well, luckily I didn't have to be in the water with all that. I stayed pretty much arm's length from all of them, but in some strange, ironic way, we stayed close. And so, I mean, my closest ones are dead, and Brian might as well be dead. And I got Mike and Al now.
When was the last time you saw Brian?
Seemed to be losing Mike a little bit, but Al, he still, got my back a little bit,
When was the last time you saw Brian?
Oh, maybe a month or so ago.
But at his birthday?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah. Gemini.
Did you have a coherent conversation with him or no? This episode is brought to you in part by Bespoke LA. Located in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles, Bespoke LA is the modern podcaster's dream come true. It's got 2 podcast pods available, one with audio only and the other with both audio and video. Just think, you can start your own podcast tomorrow without investing a single penny in equipment. What, you don't have experience editing? Don't even sweat it. For an additional fee, Bespoke LA can edit your podcast. Or not, it's entirely up to you. Rates start at $75 an hour with discounts if you book 4 sessions at once. Go to bespokela.com/podcast. That's BSPOKELA.com/podcast for more information or to book your time today. And be sure to tell them that Dave sent you for a one-time 25% discount.
The last time I had any kind of a conversation with Brian was probably almost a year ago when we were at the Grammy salute thing in the balcony there.
Yeah.
That's the last time we actually conversed where, he was more or less, focused.
What did you talk about?
We were just shooting the shit, making small talk and jokes and stuff. He goes, David. I go, what, Brian? He goes, is your middle name Trouble? Yeah. I said, no, Brian, that's my first name. So that's about the level of our intellect. Intellectual conversation, that kind of shit. But it was like old Brian in a way, kind of like,
Would you guys just, all of you, just bust on each other like that? That's how it went?
It just seems like every time we all get together like that, whether it's the Capitol Top or at Malibu or at the Grammys, whatever, red carpet bullshit, Chinese thing, we all revert back to where we left off at the same time. Like, it was always where we left off.
You mean 1963?
How else could that be, I guess? It was like at the Capitol Tower, Brian was handed it. We were getting those platinum albums, and they gave us a bottle of champagne, and Brian goes, let's just touch our tongues to it. So, Brian, neither one of us is supposed to be drinking, man. He goes, I know, but let's just touch it to our tongues. and then he'd look at Al Jardine would go, Brian, you know that part in Help Me Rhonda with the harmonica? What was that? And Brian would say something like, oh yeah, we stole that from Fannie Mae. And Al would have a big shocked look on his face. And then Brian would look at Bruce and say, you know that song, I write the songs, isn't that kind of egotistical? The thing, the champagne on the tongue was for me, but he had one for all of us. Oh, and he said, Mike, guess what my mantra is? And Mike goes, what? And Brian says, God damn it. This is stuff nobody knows.
That's awesome. But you are still meditating? You actually are.
Gary Griffin, Brian's keyboard guy, right? He told me a story. We did a gig together about a month ago, and Gary gave a story about him and Brian were at the NAMM show, the NAMM show. And Brian looks at Gary and says, this is so fucking boring. I'm going to put on my crazy act so we can get out of here.
That's great. That's so fucking great.
You heard the one about Don Henley, right?
I just heard it this evening from Dennis, actually. Thanks for the great music, and then he looks up at him and crosses out great and writes good. That is so funny. In fact, Dennis told me that maybe a half hour before I spoke with you.
He changed his mind. Yeah, she ain't great. It was good. Whatever. Oh, I bet you the last part was, and then Brian said to Don, could you go get me a Diet Coke? You didn't know that part, right?
No, that's so funny.
I sat next to Brian in an airport, for half an hour, just sat next to him. We didn't say nothing to each other. And then all of a sudden, Brian looks at me and goes, Dave, yeah, Brian, what? He goes, would you go get me a Diet Coke? Sure, man. You got it.
Honestly, they're crazy not to have you around.
They're not even around anymore. What are you talking about?
No, I know that. Bruce is a weird motherfucker. You can praise him to the skies if you'd like, but he's just a weird person giving off strange energy and not good energy either. And so for Mike to choose him to be the other guy to, maintain the license, to me is a big mistake.
Yeah, but he sings and he has an iconic figure, like the personification of the group on albums and that kind of shit.
Yeah, I suppose.
And nobody knows that now. The present Beach Boys fans don't even remember the 60s, my era. They don't even know who the hell I was or who I am. And they don't care. It's just they want to hear, the songs. They don't care who they're singing, doing it. That's how we're able to get away with the Surf City All-Stars. We go out there and people think I'm Brian and stupid idiots.
Do you enjoy doing it still?
I don't miss the airport drama. But the other part of it's okay. I mean, I can't hardly breathe no more, so I have to sit on a stool between songs.
Why is that? Is it the medical thing that you were referring to?
I don't know. My cardiologist says I might have CPOD, PCOD, OCPD, CPD. What is it?
It's one of those. It's all of those, actually.
I think I'm smoking the rug for 50 years and expect not to have any problems. Man, I wouldn't be able to take one every day like we used to get on the jet and then go play and then get on another jet in the same day.
But weren't you guys driving? You guys weren't on a jet, were you? You were driving.
Oh, I'm talking about, 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But no, when we first started out, we'd throw our shit on the plane on the 707, dual Shulman amps and just guitar cases, not protected by anything. But they made it. Tubes weren't broken or nothing. And then we'd throw those on a U-Haul or in a Chevy station wagon, and Mike would have his Jaguar and Dennis's friend driving it. I remember driving with him one time in the Jaguar, and he had the front seat taken out where he could stretch his legs out, and we almost hit a cow. And we pulled over and just ate some fresh corn off the cob, growing in the ground. It's kind of cool, actually. And then things got where we had to share a Motel 6. At first, I had to share my room with Mike, and I'd look over and I'd see Mike's butt going up and down and go, what the hell? And it was just fucking some chick. And later on, he woke me up and he made me look at his poop. And it was kind of impressive. It looked like a perfect soft serve. It's you could put that on a cone. Nobody knew that. And I just had to show somebody. Appreciate it a lot, man. And then before we left the tour, my dad put his arm around Mike and says, he's the kid, he's the youngest, you're the oldest, take care, make sure he doesn't get in trouble, and blah, blah, blah. So we're on the road, and Mike, we're rooming together in Motel 6, and I says, you have to write a letter to your mom. Your dad made me promise that I'll make you write a letter to your mom. I don't know, have you heard this one?
No.
So I said, dear Mom, we're on the road having fun, playing for all these people. I touched a little girl's pee-pee last night, and now there's stuff coming out of my wiener. It's kind of itchy, and I showed it, and I went on and on and on. It was like, that wasn't, and I showed it to Mike, and I swear to God, Mike almost died laughing. I swear to God, he was... I've never seen anybody since laugh that hard.
Did you send it?
No. I did tell my dad about it, though, when I got home, and he laughed.
Was it really was it whorehouses at every stop in every city?
Not for me, but I'm sure it was for Dennis and Mike. Me and Carl were just like, go and play with ourselves. Hey, could you learn this guitar part?
Did you lose your virginity on one of the tours?
Actually, no. I think it was in junior high.
Oh, so was it before then?
It was before the tour, I think, yeah.
Wow.
But it was like really, really, really weird, because it was this girl who had two older brothers, the Sailors. Barbara Sailor was there, and Bobby and Richie Sailor. And these two guys were like jocks, seniors, and I was in the 7th grade. And I'm sneaking over to their little sister's house after school. And man, it was like really dangerous, because those guys I don't know what they would have done to me if she had told on me. That's the thing. I started ditching her. I'd drive down the street, and she'd run out, David, and I'd, hide.
And you were 14?
What?
You were 14?
Let's see. I was in 8th grade. What are you, 14?
Yeah, 14. 13 or 14.
Yeah, I used to steal my dad's Buick and try to see how close I could get to the parked cars.
That's pretty good for that early. I mean, I lost my virginity at 16. That's pretty late.
We were way ahead of ourselves back then. I think hanging out with Dennis and Mike probably had an influence on me.
Yeah. I mean, Dennis is known for that, but Mike also, by his own admission, that was kind of his drug.
Yeah, Dennis, steal your dad's car. See a car you can get to a parked car going 60. Okay, Dennis, that sounds like fun. And then Mike would go, hey, Dave, see how many girls you can fuck in one night without getting STDs. Okay, Mike, that sounds like a lot. Are these rubbers? He goes, yeah, man, can I have a sip of your vodka? And then my dad would find out that I was drinking on a gig one time in Arizona, and it'd say, blow in my face, and I'd go, and spray it, and it'd beat the shit out of me. And it was like, just like being home. What the hell time is it anyways?
Where are you? What state are you in?
I'm in the studio apartment in Burbank, California.
Okay, so it's 7:30 there. I'm in Vermont.
So it's getting late over there, so you better take care.
This has been amazing. I'll probably call you back for some more questions to let
I don't know, though. You better have all this on tape, because I don't think it's going to get any better.
I do. David, I really appreciate you. I want you to know, you didn't throw me off at the beginning. Your work really means a lot to me. I see you just as much as a real Beach Boy as any of the guys, and I always will, always have.
Well, that doesn't matter. It's just the way it is. The first 5 years, or whatever it was, in the early 60s, was it. The Pet Sounds, that was Brian, nothing to do with Beach Boys. That was just right. Brian. And everything after that was just regurgitation. So anyways, you can thank Dennis and have a good night. Take care of your kid, your family, and I'll talk to you later, man.
I'll be in touch, because I know the other guys are going to do stuff, and I definitely want to call you back for some follow-up stuff.
I don't know. I might be done. If
you are, you are. But I just want you to know I really appreciate you, and I appreciate this.
All right. Thank Dennis. Good night.
All right. That about does it. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/Discograffiti. Stay tuned, because next week we've got the first installment of the longest interview Carney Wilson has ever given, a 5-hour bonanza during which we discuss 8 of her favorite Beach Boys records, which winds up offering a wildly compelling history of the band through Brian's daughter's eyes. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then, come Monday, author of the indispensable tome Becoming the Beach Boys, James B. Murphy, will be here to rate and discuss the Beach Boys' very first LP, Surfin' Safari. And so it begins. This episode will be offered on our Patreon's major tier only, but is available for purchase at a minimal amount as well. Don't miss it, or you'll only be getting part of the story. And then on Wednesday, the Lieutenant tier gets their early release, ad-free, super extended director's cut of Part 1 of the Carney Wilson Discograffiti interview. It's the show as it was truly intended to be heard, with all the essentials left intact. And then come Friday, all the rest of you penny pinchers get to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, David Marks, Joe Kennedy for that killer new theme song, Dennis Dyken, Jeff McAvoy, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, Jay Schultz, Bespoke LA, my mom, my dad, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator, and much, much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into classic rock and roll from the 1960s is to leap headfirst into my interview with Pete Best, which just happened in episode 188. The Righteous Brothers Bill Medley interview, episodes 181 and 182. My interview with the Free Design, that's 160 to 162. My epic interview with the Mamas and Papas Michelle Phillips, that's 141 to 159. Blood, Sweat, and Tears is 137. My 12-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander from The Association is 109 to 113. Vashti Bunyan rating her own output is 103 and 104. Sergio Diaz from Os Mutantes is 86 and 87. Bert Summer is 83 and 84. Sweetwater is 79. David Crosby is 77 and 78. Andrew Tuttle rates the Monks is 74. Jim Florentine on Black Sabbath is 64 to 68. Lou Barlow on the Zombies is 59 and 60. Marvin Gaye biographer David Ritz rates Marvin Gaye, that's 45 to 47. Blind Faith is 43. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground, that's 32 and 33. Bob Forrest rates the band, that's 25 and 27. Monkees manager Andrew Sandoval rates the Monkees as 22 and 23. Don Randy rates David Axelrod as 17. Badfinger is 16. The Bee Gees is 10 and 11. Sly and the Family Stone is 5, 6, and 7, and Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, January 24th, we're coming at you with the first installment of the longest interview Carney Wilson has ever given, our 5-hour discussion of 8 of her favorite Beach Boys LPs. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!